All right, let's kind of work on the piston here. So I had mentioned earlier about getting it all cleaned up, and it's done. It's still got the original factory oil score marks on it. But the only thing I noticed on it is just a little bit of wear out here, you know, down here on the intake side. But otherwise, it's in fantastic shape. And got the ring back on. So what I'm going to do real quick is just give a shot of air in here. Just to make sure I didn't have any debris that I couldn't see in the ring channel or up here. I also did chamfer over all these corners here so that they're no longer sharp and pointed. Okay, so I guess maybe it'd help to get you in a little closer. Okay. So I'm going to grab a little bit of FD rated 2-stroke oil. There's a number of good ones out there, and I happen to really like Husqvarna XB Plus. So I'm just going to take a syringe, get in there and grab a little bit of oil, because we want to lube things up. Okay, so I'm gonna, sure doesn't require much either. So I'm just putting a little bit of lube in here. And unfortunately, I got some on the mating surfaces. That's okay, I'll be degreasing those again when the time comes. Okay, I'm gonna put just a little bit in here. Uh-oh, looks like I just lost you. You get to see the top of my shop here on the main floor. Let's get you back. There's something wrong with my tripod here. Anyway, it wants to pivot on me. Hopefully I can keep you here now. Okay. So, we got you back after our tripod malfunction. So, now it's really not important to get the top of this yet. But I don't know, maybe today we'll work on the cylinder too. So I'm just going to move the ring to open up the gap, make sure I get some oil back in there. You kind of get the idea, right? I'm going to put a little bit on the inside. Put them in here since we've got the gudgeon pin or the wrist pin that's going to be needing to slide in there. So probably more oil than we really need, but that's okay. Okay, get the inside and outside of the bearing. We'll pop that in the top of the rod. Now, here's the intake side, of course. And I didn't take out that old circlip. It's just absolutely fine. There's just no need for that. So, this, as you might guess, is pretty straightforward. I'm just gonna try my best to line up get this started here first. I think you're slipping again. right. Yes, it is. Sorry about that. All right, so I started the gudgeon pin, or the wrist pin. Got the needle bearing in there. I'm just gonna do my best to line things up here and send it home. There we go, just like that. Okay, I'm gonna grab a drift and just make sure that I have it all the way up against the other circlip on the other side. I'm going to try and reposition you here while we're doing this. I think we're going to have to consider going to some different tripod here. This one is not behaving. Okay. There we go. So things are lubricated. We're going to pop in a new circlip. Pretty easy to do. And let's see, I don't know why I do this, but so the ear on that circlip is on the bottom, so I'm going to put the ear on this circlip up on the top. All right, and so I'm just going to grab a little needle nose here. See if I can get you to view this. Okay, and just gonna put this in the slot a little bit. There, you see how that started pressing in. So I'm gonna tweak it one more time here because I don't think it, there, now it's snapped in place. And I'm gonna rotate it here just a little bit. Because I like having, well, the ear more or less is on top. Just filling here to make sure that I have the circlip in place. I'm just gonna move it a little bit more to my liking. Everyone has their preferences, and I like having the ear on opposite sides of one another from the other side. So anyway, this one is now, we got it installed, and it's ready to start considering assembling the cylinder now. All right, we still have yet to obviously tighten down the flywheel, but we can do that later, even after the pawls and whatnot are installed. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, we're just getting kind of some stuff set up here for the piston cylinder assembly, because, you know, we want the ignition wires to already be set up through here before we pop the whole cylinder and carb assembly together in one piece. All right, there is no torque associated with the pawls or with the screws on the ignition module, because those are going to be set with some Loctite. Okay, so the pawls, yeah, you know, it really helps take photos, video, or to have the service manual. But I know from experience how these things are put together. So first off, you need a washer. Magnet's kind of pushing that off, obviously. Let's do that one first. Okay. this is going to end up this is down below, it fits around there. The spring, the straight part of the spring is going to come up against the back side of these fins. And then the hook facing upward hooks into that little notch. It's going to be like this, and it's going to provide that tension. This is going to, the screw is going to fit down through here, and then there's a little integrated bushing that fits down into the hole on that pawl like that. Okay, so given that the magnet's pushing that washer aside, I'm just going to kind of pop the whole thing together here in one assembly. Okay, letting it drop down now. Start to screw it in place. Okay, I forgot. Just mentioned to you that we need to use Loctite, right? So let's use Loctite. Yeah, you know, anyway. Easy to forget stuff. All right. Loctite. There we go. All right, we're getting it. Trust me. Because everything's spring-loaded there, it does kind of make it a little bit challenging to get everything lined up. You want to make sure the spring isn't getting pinched. It's got to be down below. Okay. See how that's going to work. All right. 4mm Allen. Okay. It's got Loctite on it, so I don't have to worry about going crazy there. So we got one pawl in place. Kind of getting things fitted here. Okay. A lot of moving parts. Okay, yeah, literally, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. Get these pawls going. All right, so this isn't fitting the way it should. Well, something is hung up here. Something is preventing this screw from, you don't want to force it and cross thread anything. There we go. It's just getting bound up on itself. I had to get it through that hole on the pawl. All right, springs in place, tensioned right, everything's positioned in the right direction. Loctite on the threads. All right, now we've got the pawls installed. All right, let's start working on the ignition coil here. See if I still got you guys focused and whatnot. Yeah, all right, good. Still getting used to this new shop and different tripod options, figured out how to best do the filming. I hope you're some of these videos have been good enough where you can actually make heads or tails of what's going on. All right, coil's been all cleaned up. We tested it for spark before we dismantled everything, so we know our coil is good. Okay, so again, we're going to use Loctite. Again, 4mm Allens for the heads on this. There's a washer that fits on that hole, and then you don't need a washer here. The contact on the wire is serving that purpose. So I'm going to grab the bolt with the washer first. Apply some Loctite to it. There we go. Get it started. Okay, get some Loctite. On the other bolt. Get that hand started. We'll send that home. Now, since I've already got the Loctite in it, I could have just set this up so that it could have gotten everything set up loosely without Loctite. But since we've put the Loctite in there, and I really have no reason to take the module off again. Again, I'm going to make sure you're in focus. All right. Might as well go ahead and gap it. So there's a magnet up here, the magnet's there, they form the magneto. And so I'm just going to position this particular part from Husqvarna, as you can see right here. And these coils, the Jonsered and Husqvarnas, are 0.3 millimeters. So we're going to go ahead and position that card right here, and then move our magnets across from one another and make sure that the coil comes up against that card. And now we will tighten these very snugly. Of course, again, no need to go overboard, but you definitely don't want this to come loose. That's one reason for the Loctite. But you definitely don't want the coil coming loose and then damaging your flywheel. Okay, so we've got a 0.3 millimeter gap. Now I'm just moving things here. Okay, so I got to watch the piston. Everything seems to be just fine. Yep, everything seems to be clearing all right. So we don't have to redo that. I just like to move it. If for some reason these can kind of tilt a little bit, and in fact on this one it does appear to be a little bit tighter on the lower side here. So it is easy enough to just put that back in there and re-gap it, but it's not that tight, so we are good. There's no point in overthinking it. Okay, so now we're gonna just get our wires in position. send them through this big gap that's there to accommodate the module, ignition module or coil, whatever you want to decide to call it. All right. Now, spark plug wire is going to go in this lower receptacle and wind up that way. Our kill switch here is going to end up overlapping the top of it and going down in through here. So I'm trying to be very careful with this shroud because I do not want to have to replace this plastic shroud. There we go. Everything is in place for that. Now we'll put the blue wire where it needs to be. I'm going to go get another specialty tool. I want to show you a tool from Stihl, which is really nice. And it works in these situations where you have to deal with wires. See that blunt end? Nicely chamfered over and polished. It's not going to damage any wires, but it's great for pressing wires in situations like this. Once you get them started, then you can utilize these to press them in, and you're not going to be doing any damage to them in the process. Okay, so this is going to end up fitting through that little round hole here in the case. And there's a little notch right there. See how I fit that in place? So now we got the shroud in place. Let's see what things look like up on top here. See, that's going to fit in there. This wire is going to go to our kill switch. No reason why I can't attach it now. It's going to actually be difficult to do that once I have the carburetor all set up. That's why I wanted to do this right now. Get this all set up. All right, now I don't really like the way this is protruding here. I'm hoping it's not going to rub too much on the starter assembly, and I don't think it will, from what I recall. So let's go back here. And really, there isn't any reason why we can't install the starter assembly. Again, we know we still have to tighten this. We'll do that once the cylinder is on. But for right now, we can actually pop on our assembly. So remember, you've got to move the starter to get them to engage those pawls, right? And you'll know when they engage. There. This will fit down, and you'll be starting to move your flywheel and so forth. And now you won't be able to move your flywheel easily unless you use the starter assembly here to assist. Anyway, okay, so we're at this point where pretty soon we're going to really have to do have no other choice but to start dealing with the cylinder assembly. So while we got it up here, we might as well go ahead and get this tightened down. I never really liked the fact that they used Phillips and straight edge slots for that. You can get versions that have Torx or hex. Not a bad idea. I think later I'm probably going to upgrade those. That way it's just one less, you know, I can carry just something like this with me in the field. All right. There are torque specs to this, but I've never worried about that on a starter assembly. I oftentimes take these apart to clean the flywheel, and I always check them in the field because these can loosen and then strip the housing and or strip the crankcase as well as the bolts. So it's always a good idea to keep an eye on those. But anyway, we now are in golden shape, and it is time to start thinking about the final stages of rebuild by working on the cylinder. So those are going to be the next videos. All right, so the first step here before we actually slap the cylinder on the crankcase is we got to deal with this boot. This has to get on the intake manifold here, and we're going to replace this rubber portion. There's a band that straps it right here. It's not screwed in. You notice there is no impulse holes here. The impulse line is a separate line. It's kind of unique to this particular model and generation of 268 chassis. Of course, this is Jonsered. So anyway, it was a unique aspect of the Jonsereds after they had first been purchased by Electrolux. And you do want to be careful with this band so you can try and reuse it. Otherwise, you'd have to find some other, you know, similar replacement for this, you know, to lock it down here. Now, new rubber is going to be fairly tight, but over time, you know, it may loosen, so you really do need the band. But this is a part that is no longer available, fortunately, and this is the one case where I had no choice but to go with aftermarket. Proline, through a website called Sawzilla Parts. Here's the part number, you know, for that. This would actually be the Husky equivalent or Jonsered equivalent intake boot part number. It's Proline. The old one actually seems all right, but I'm just, you know, not willing to risk some issues with the fitment here up against the carb, and it might not seal. You can see there's indentations, so it is old rubber. On this version and generation of saw, there is no carb gaskets. There's no carb gasket here on this side of the carb or on the other side where the air intake or the air filter assembly bolts on. It's a little odd. I don't know. If I ever end up with leaks around that, then maybe I'd make my own gaskets. The Husqvarna versions have a completely different carburetor cylinder setup, and so they do have gaskets. Anyway, so first job is going to be to get this little metal retainer. And I don't know if it really matters, but this particular one has a little kind of divot in it. So at least in this case, this is on the lower side of that particular retainer. This is the top. You can see where this came up against the top engine cover, right? Here's the bottom. You can see where this portion of the band was underneath here. So at any rate, if you're looking towards the cylinder, there's a little bit of a longer side on the left side of this assembly, and there's a shorter side here. So the longer side is on the left, right? And so the screws are not perfectly level. They're kind of tilted down to the left. So I don't know if that helps you maybe remember that if you have one of these saws. So what I'm going to do here is carefully with a straight edge get that retainer out from the back here and try my best not to damage this, so that I can maybe use this as a spare in the future. I'm going to end up bagging it and protecting it from heat. So maybe it'll still be good for a while, but I'm sure it's not. See how that pressed out? It was super easy. Okay, so that's step one. Now this is fit inside this housing. You can't get a hold of this anymore, so be careful. You do not want to crack this. And you know, it may be brittle. It may, it's aged. This is, you know, at least a 25 if not 35-year-old saw. So I'm just going to carefully you know, try and grab it, get my finger behind it, press in. You see how I'm pressing in like that, you know, to pry this out and try and do it as quickly as possible. So, you know, I probably should clean that up a little bit before I store it. And I am going to go ahead and obviously get some of the gunk off of the inside of this retainer. Don't have my air up right now, otherwise I would be blowing it off, but I don't like firing up my compressor just for something little like that. This is the exterior anyway. It's not going to get a lot of you know, direct feed into the carburetor or anything, but it certainly does show you how fine sawdust, oil-soaked sawdust, you know, it just gets everywhere. It's hard to actually keep it out of your carburetor too. So I've gotten this, you know, fit up as best I can. Okay, long part is on this side, and it's supposed to be fitting down, so there you go. So as you can see, when this boot has a little ridge on it here, it's gonna, you know, fit up and around this ridge. And then when you crank the bolts down real good, this rubber will compress up against the carburetor. Carburetor will compress up against this, and it, you know, it should work pretty well. But I just find it interesting that there really are no gaskets involved. Okay, so hopefully I won't have too much issue pressing this in. If I do, I may grab some of that pressing oil again, just to get it in there a little bit easier, because again, you don't want to damage these rubber parts. So doing my best to start it. And I'll tell you, it's not going terribly easy. I may try this other side here first, see if that makes it a little bit easier. You know, and it's not. So this is a bit of a job. I don't think there's any way you can get it misaligned in here. But pressing this through isn't terribly easy. I could grab a spring to help me, but I'm just using my fingers. You can see as I'm pressing it in, just keep working it. As you get it pressed in, work around the other, keep working around the edge, pressing as you go, compressing the whole thing. It looks like it's going to work, but man, I don't like this, and it is putting pressure on this plastic piece. Once you start getting it, you know, started and fitting in there, I think it's gonna go. But it's a good thing that these types of parts, you know, last a while. You don't want to be replacing this every time you might have to pop the cylinder off or the carburetor off, and hopefully that doesn't become a necessity or a frequent necessity. Oh yeah, see, I'm having a fun time getting this in here, obviously. I'm gonna try and compress it this way. Okay, I'm having a little more luck. Now I'm gonna grab it from this side, maybe with a screwdriver, careful not to damage the plastic edge of the housing there. There, I gave it a good pressing and now it's popped through. Okay. So, you know, it's hard to say how well this aftermarket fits. And I can see a little bit of a gap there, but that could just be from, you know, this is out from the edge of this housing more than the old one. So I think it's going to get, you know, pressed in there fine with the pressure from the screw. And it's going to probably seal just fine. Anyway, that was not fun. Okay. So this retaining ring, you know, kind of helps serve the function of getting things sealed and lined up too. So this should be fairly easy to just get installed here. Line it up with these two curved portions, or the grooves of the retainer, with the bump outs across the car bolts there, and there we go. So that's done. So now don't forget, before you slide it on the cylinder, and this may be where some pressing oil will help to get it around this intake manifold, because again, new rubber, it's probably going to fit fairly tight. We'll see. There are a couple ridges here, you know, that are going to help that fit a little bit, but so don't forget how it's supposed to be oriented, like this. Okay. And I can see that, sorry, you're maybe not seeing that too well. Okay, so I think it's going to fit pretty tight without some lubrication. I just don't feel comfortable. Nice thing about this pressing oil is that it's going to dry and not leave any residue. We're on the outside too of the cylinder, so it's not quite as big of a deal here. So I just pushed it all the way around here and knock out a little bit of the excess. Okay, position it correctly. Don't forget to put the band on. You can't forget that. Okay. All right, so now we're gonna make sure that band is plenty loose enough so it's not going to interfere with anything. I'm just going to put it down here till I get things initially started, and then I think it's, you know, hopefully pretty self-explanatory here on how to maybe get these started and coax them around. The very edge of the rubber isn't quite so critical. If it might get a little scored, I mean, you got a pretty wide area here that's gonna seat up against the manifold, and there you can see I got it. It's gonna end up stopping right up against the edge of that manifold there. You can see the manifold through there. So basically that's all there is to it. Now we've got it all the way in. Now I did actually put the band on the wrong way, so I guess, hey, you learn, right? This screw is not accessible from back here. If you ever had to loosen this without taking off the cylinder, you can't get to it. You got to get to it from the flywheel side. So I've got to take this baby off and resituate it. So I'm going to try and use the screwdriver to my advantage to help pry this boot up, you know, hopefully not do any damage in the process. And a bigger screwdriver might help. So I'm just trying to get under the edge of it so I can get the boot started to pry it up and over and press it out. All right. So the bottom there. Now we're in business. So we're going to try this again. Practice makes perfect, I guess. So put the band on first. Now I'm going to use a little screwdriver to try and get it, if you can see that, try and get that started up around the corner, and then everything else is lubricated. I got 3/4 on now, so I should just be able to press this home. Okay, got it. Fit that collar up around. Okay, so we should be back in business now. Okay. Hopefully you can see all of this. Make sure that your rubber right here is parallel. It's at the same distance all the way around the manifold. Check inside here to make sure the manifold is butting up against the stop on the boot. All right, we should be good. No need to cover this anymore. I'll get this band tightened up, and then we're going to be ready for the next phase.